1. In a life full of weird encounters, I feel like this is the creepiest I've experienced. I was a single woman living alone at the time. My apartment building was isolated near the edge of town, where most of its neighboring property was a large empty field. I was about to go on a long trip, and I'd been up all night cleaning and packing. A little before 6 a.m., I decided to get some laundry done. It's critical to the story that you understand the structure of the building, so I apologize if this part's a little dull. Basically, all of the apartments opened up directly outside like a motel, so there was no hallways or anything. My apartment opened up onto a fenced-in porch with stairs leading down to the street. The fence continued around the yard, and there was a drop of about 6 feet on the other side, meaning the only way to get to and from my apartment was to go up those narrow cement stairs. The stairs opened up to an alley which you had to take in order to get to our building's laundry room. A single washer and dryer were available in a locked tiny space right behind the apartments. I didn't want to keep going up and down the steps, so I wrestled a huge bag of laundry and made my way to the alley. Even though it was technically the morning, it was still pitch black outside. There was a safety light attached to the building, but beyond that, the path was lit only by the moon and stars. It was so quiet outside that I scared myself by accidentally kicking a rock. There wasn't another soul around. It took me maybe 2 minutes max to get the laundry into the washer, pour the soap, and deposit the coins. I locked the door behind me and headed back toward the alley again. When I turned the corner, I froze. At the end of the alley, right in front of the only opening to the stairs, there was a woman standing with her back to me. Her body was stiff and unnatural like a wind-up toy. Her feet were about a foot apart, and her arms were slightly lifted straight out at her sides. Her head was up, but it was jutting forward, as if her neck were extra long. She didn't move or act like she heard my footsteps. I immediately held my breath, going still myself. I waited for the woman to move, but she stayed like that, arms splayed, head crooked. She was completely blocking the way, and I'd have to slide past her to get to the stairs. Though she wasn't doing anything other than standing in a creepy way, I had no idea why she was there or what she was capable of, so obviously I wanted to avoid confronting her. Unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of options. My cell phone was still inside, because I hadn't expected the run to the laundry room to take more than a minute. I had my car keys, but my car was parked in front of the building, meaning I'd have to walk past her to get to it. I sat there for what felt like ages, heart pounding, mind racing. I was so freaked out my eyes were watering, and all the while the woman didn't so much as twitch. I debated knocking on a neighbor's door, but since she wasn't attacking me, I thought it might be stupid to wake people up. I wasn't sure if I was overreacting or not, and I couldn't just stand around all night. So after a good amount of time, I decided to force myself to walk past her. Yes, this is the part of the horror film where I would have died. I took slow, cautious steps toward her, and still she was frozen. As I got closer, I kept expecting her to turn toward me, but with only a foot left between us, she still hadn't. I took a deep breath and began to slide by her until I could finally see her face. I will never forget the way she looked. Her eyes were bulging wide, unblinking, staring straight ahead. Her jaw completely slack, mouth open almost unnaturally wide. Seeing her head hunched forward from the side was even more horrific than from the back, and I immediately thought that, should the zombie apocalypse be on the horizon, I was about to be one of the first victims. Then she started to move. Not her body, just her head. Her shoulders remained stiff and slumped forward, her arms still straight at her sides. But her head, that head on her oddly long neck, began to loll toward me. Her eyes didn't move, but she twisted until our gazes met. Her expression completely unchanged, less than a foot away from me. That's it. I ran the rest of the way up the steps inside my apartment. I locked the door and stood against it for a long while, still shaking from the encounter. When I looked out the peephole again, she was gone. But I waited until the sun was shining bright before I went back to get my laundry. I stopped washing my clothes when it was dark out after that. So yeah, creepy lady, if you somehow followed me to LA, let's not meet. 2. So this is a story that I've debated sharing for a very long time. It's something that happened over several years, and I feel like it's something that I need to get off my chest. At the time of this story, I was in high school. I began to grow quite a following on a website called DeviantArt, and had made several friends out of my watchers. At one point, I decided to make a group on Google Hangouts where I'd be able to talk with my friends and watchers more often. That's when this one person started talking to me. For the sake of the story, let's call him Jackson. Jackson started off as a kind of awkward guy who would rarely join calls when we had them. Eventually, he got comfortable enough to do voice calls and quickly bonded with a lot of my online friends. As we grew close, he told us that he had autism. Looking back, that may have let us excuse a lot of red flags and toxic behavior, as he was not the only one in the chat who had autism. The problem with Jackson was he was very aggressive towards my other autistic friends. This would range from him hinting that he thought they were ugly to flat out yelling at them if they said something he didn't agree with. There was even a point where he threatened to kill my friend's cat if she didn't shut up. This caused her to stay away from the chat for weeks. Whenever we would confront him about it, he would blame it on his autism and talk about how much of a curse it was, which in turn would make us drop the subject. After a while, Jackson began to help some of us out with our comics and art projects. And by help, I mean he would try to find ways to force his ideas and characters onto us. When we would try to give him criticism or tell him that we didn't think his ideas would fit with our stories, he would lose it. We later found out that he would do this because he didn't like how some of us had a larger following than him, and he thought if he was part of our stories, he would get some of our followings. It eventually became something we grew numb to as artists. Then one day, when Jackson and I were in the call alone together, he confessed that he had feelings for me and asked if I would be his girlfriend. Being a teenager with low self-esteem, I said yes. The relationship didn't last long, as he would constantly do things that I told him made me uncomfortable. Like he asked if I watched porn, if I masturbated when I thought about him, etc. At first I didn't mind it, but eventually it was all he would ever talk about with me. I would tell him I wasn't comfortable asking that, and he would continue despite this. We broke up 2 months into the relationship. He still wouldn't give up, though. Whenever he joined calls now, he would comment on how sexy I was, or how because I was chubby that meant I was automatically adorable, and would constantly compare me to the other girls in the chat to make them feel terrible. Once again, whenever we would bring this up with him, he would blame it on his curse that was autism. It got worse when he started dating someone who had recently joined the chat. Let's call her Lucinda. Jackson and Lucinda happened to live really close to each other, and after a while began to date. I was relieved, as I thought this would stop him from constantly making inappropriate comments towards me. It didn't. Whenever Lucinda wasn't in the call, he would continue to make sexual comments toward me. After that, I had given up trying to make him stop and simply ignored it. Then one of my stories in particular started to get popular, and that's when I met my current boyfriend, let's call him C. C joined the Hangouts chat, and we instantly began to bond. After a few months of talking, C and I started dating, much to the dismay of Jackson. He then began to aim sexual comments towards me when C was in the call. Unlike me, C would always call Jackson out on this. Jackson continued to blame his autism for his behavior. The final straw was when Jack threatened to dox me, find out where I lived, and have sex with me. All while C was in the call. C and I had enough at that point, and we told Jackson that what he did was just not okay, especially when he had a girlfriend. He then told us that he didn't love Lucinda, and that he was only dating her to make me jealous so I would date him again. C lost it at that point and called Jackson every name under the sun before kicking him out of the chat. No less than a couple hours later, Lucinda joins that call in tears. She tells us that Jackson had broken up with her and that he was screaming and yelling about how he was going to dox me and C for kicking him out of the chat. He would say things like how he was kicked out of school for nearly strangling a kid, and that he could do it to my friend's pets. Thankfully, he was bluffing, and nothing ever came of his threats. After that, he tried to persuade my other friends that we had bullied him and wrongfully kicked him from the chat. Thankfully, my friends knew of his toxic behavior and just blocked him. It's been years since I've heard anything about Jackson. One of my friends who lives near him told me that he had been arrested for assault. I don't know if that's true or not, but I wouldn't put it past him. So Jackson, whether you are in prison or not, I hope that we never have a chance to meet. 3. A few years back, when I was around 18 years old, my best friend Jesse at the time was dating and rooming with this guy named Corey. Corey had a twin brother named Tyler. They were both super nice, friendly guys. I would hang out over Jesse's house quite often because she didn't drive and had a baby to take care of. A lot of the time I would babysit for her so she can work her 2 jobs. When Corey and Jesse started to date, Corey's twin brother needed a place to stay as well. There was enough room in the apartment for Tyler to stay at Jesse's apartment for a while, until he was able to get back on his feet. So pretty much every time I was at Jesse's, the twins were there as well. Not too long after Tyler had arrived, Jesse made a joke stating how fun it would be for me to date Tyler, since she was dating Corey. She thought it would be cool for the 2 best friends to date the twin brothers. At this time I had a boyfriend and I wasn't interested in Tyler that way. I had just turned 18 and Tyler was 26 years old. I felt that he was too old for me at that point in time as well. I wasn't particularly happy with the boyfriend I had either, and Jesse knew that as well. I was trying to make it work though. One day Tyler was taking a shower when I had arrived at Jesse's. Jesse and Corey were hungry and wanted to go grab some food for everyone. They left and I stayed behind just chilling in Jesse's bedroom. Tyler had came in not too long after they left, and sat on the bed with me. He was talking to me about random things and all of a sudden, he just blurts out that he has strong feelings for me and that he is in love with me. I barely knew him. But I told him I was sorry and that I had a boyfriend, which he already knew, but I felt I needed to remind him. He told me that he knows, but he just wishes that he had me instead, and that he will just have to learn to get over it. So from there I relaxed a bit about the situation. After all, you can't help who you're attracted to, and that's totally fine. A couple months later, I was talking to Jesse on the phone and Tyler was there with Jesse. She was again joking about me and Tyler dating, and I said he is too old for me anyway. It might be your thing, but not mine. I was trying to joke back with Jesse. I had to get off the phone, though, with Jesse after that point because I had things to do. Not too long after we hung up, she called me back. When I answered, she said Tyler just scared the shit out of her. I asked her what had happened. She said he got super angry at what I had said about him being too old for me, and he started flipping shit and stormed out of the house. She thought he was going to do some damage. I couldn't believe he was being so overdramatic like that. I told her that he is being ridiculous and needs to get over it. It's just how I feel. He is a nice guy, but no thank you. I made that clear a while ago anyway. Jessie knew about that incident of him telling me he had strong feelings for me anyway. She probably shouldn't have kept joking about it, but again, she felt she was being harmless. After his breakdown at Jessie's, he did end up apologizing to her and me for acting that way. We forgave him and told him he needs to work on his anger issues or he is going to scare people away. He promised he would. A couple more months later, Tyler started texting about how he can make me happy, and that I should leave the guy I was with for him. That he would do everything for me and give me anything I wanted. I told him he needed to stop this because I had already told him I wasn't interested. He wouldn't stop though. He kept blowing up my phone with long, paragraphed messages about wanting me to be with him, the things he would buy me and do for me, and also talking really bad about my boyfriend at the time. Which he wasn't wrong about my boyfriend at the time. My boyfriend at that time was a horrible human being as well. I was getting sick of him blowing up my phone after I was repeatedly nice to him about the situation, and tried my best to let him down easy. So I went to my boyfriend about it. As soon as I showed him the texts, that created a whole other wildfire. He lost his shit and got angry with me as if it was my fault. He ended up punching a hole in his bedroom door and fighting with me the whole car ride. He said I brought this on myself because I didn't stop talking to Tyler. I was pretty upset that he was treating me that way. And then I had Tyler blowing up my phone as well. It was too much at once. So I blocked Tyler from messaging me and calling me. That didn't stop him though. He would make Facebooks and message me on there. Super long paragraphs again. He started talking about marrying me and what ring I would like for him to buy. He wanted to get me all these gifts too, and sometimes he would. He would get me gifts and have Jessie and Corey bring them to me when he was at work. I would constantly tell him to leave me alone, and he would say he would do that if that's what I wanted. I would tell him it was what I wanted and he would leave me alone for maybe a day, sometimes less. Then I would get another 5 paragraphs from him again. Every day this happened, and it happened pretty much all day. I had stopped responding, hoping he would stop then, but he didn't. He kept sending the paragraphs and I honestly stopped reading them. I blocked him on Facebook, and he would just make another one and message me on it. He kept up with that for a long time. I was ignoring him though. Then one day was the last straw. I tried my best to be patient with him and to not take it to the police, but this was it. Tyler messaged me again on Facebook. He said that my silence had given him the impression that I am playing hard to get, and that he likes that. He said that he understands just what I am doing now, so, since I won't talk to him, he is going to come to my house and give me what I want. He said if I didn't answer him back right now, that he was going to come over and do things to me that I can't even imagine, and then I will really want him. I didn't reply to those messages either, thinking he wasn't really going to drive to my house. He is just trying to get a response out of me, and it's not happening. It was a scary message, though, nonetheless. I had taken a nap at some point that day. There was a knock on my door, but I didn't answer it. My mother wasn't home, so if it was her, she would have the keys and come in. I just ignored the knock and went back to sleep. Then I heard my mom come in and call my name. I got up and went to her, and she said that I had a letter from someone. It was shoved under the door. She handed it to me, and it was a letter from Tyler. He did show up at my house. In the letter, he wrote some pretty disgusting things to me. He said he was pissed that I didn't open the door and let him in, that he came all the way down here just to talk to me, and this is how I treat him, that I am a bitch and selfish, etc. He said he was going to take me out to pick a wedding ring, and now it's the last thing he ever wants to do. He said he hated me. He just went on and on in the letter expressing his anger with me. I immediately showed my mom and printed out the conversations from the Facebook messages. My mother and I both went down to the police station and made a report and documentation. The police read and documented everything, but nothing super crazy had been done yet. I wonder what would have happened to me if I did open that door when he came to my house. I am so glad I didn't. It didn't end there. A couple days later, my mom had just arrived home. She said she saw a car parked out front of the house. The person in it was sleeping. It was a man. He ended up waking up and seeing my mom and booked it out, and she chased him down as far as she could, at least until she got his license plate information. We took it to the police to see if it was Tyler. It was. He was sleeping outside my house in his car, stalking me, waiting for me to come outside. It seemed I always just missed him, and it was like luck. It was strange, but I was thankful. Once that was taken to the police, an official court date was being made. He was taken to court for everything, and I had to be there to watch. They never asked me to testify, but I was there to see what consequences one would get from this harassment. He got a slap on the wrist and was told to never talk to me again. He agreed with everything the judge said and went on his way. I was angry that that was all he got, but he didn't rape me, abuse me, or murder me, so that's all he was able to get. I thought I was finally rid of him, though. I still stayed cautious of my surroundings. I had always carried my keys in between my knuckles, and I had a taser as well. For a little while, I would have someone walk me to my car every time I left work at night, just in case Tyler was lurking somewhere. He was a strong bodybuilder type, so I knew I would never have a chance against him. A few months go by, almost a year, and I get a comment on my separate business Facebook and follow page. It was Tyler. He was commenting super vulgar things on my page. One of the comments concerned my boobs. I immediately printed that out and went to the police. They couldn't believe he was back at it again, harassing me. I was so tired of this shit already. I felt like he would never go away. Again, we went to court, and this time he was not allowed on social media at all for at least 3 years, and he wasn't allowed to have any contact with me, or anyone that is in contact with me. He also had to do community service, and he did get taken away in handcuffs. During the process of this second court meeting, he did admit to his lawyer, who told my lawyer, that he was obsessed with me and he didn't know why. My lawyer told me what he said, and I felt cold inside. I couldn't believe it, to hear that actual word, obsessed. That's actually what it was too, and for him to actually say it too, as if it's normal. Since that court date, I hadn't heard from him or Corey or any of his family. I haven't seen them either. I have moved twice since that has happened, and my Facebook is quite private. I am 25 next month, and I am constantly still having to worry that he will find me one day, that he will make a Facebook and try to harass me again. I am pregnant with my first child, and don't need that stress along with that. I hope we never meet again, Tyler. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 371. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, alas, yet again, I still didn't get the decorating done, just not feeling well at all. And quite frankly, at this point I don't really care, I can just wait till I'm feeling better. Next, not as sore as it was, though. Well, I was up early for a change, so I'm hoping to get done with work a little bit earlier than usual, so I can pop out and maybe do a little grocery shopping, just get a few essentials, bread and the like, and some snacks. It was sunny earlier when I popped my head out, so I'm expecting torrential rain by the time I'm done. The way things go in this country with the weather. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.